Hello fiber friends! I am putting together this quick little long draw from the fold tutorial. I've had several students working on this technique and I thought it would be a really good thing to have a video that we can kind of reference and say, go look at this, this is how I'm doing it. So I hope that you'll enjoy some of these tips and techniques. This is what I'm spinning today. This is from one of the Paradise Fibers subscriptions. This is Twirl. It is a combed merino and it does have some variegation in it, but it's very, very subtle. It's a really lovely kind of periwinkle purple. It's so pretty. And I started out spinning it with this Turkish spindle that I have. This one is 3D printed from Kraken and I just needed some purple. So I thought I'm going to spin this lovely purple with this lovely purple spindle, and I just had some fun. So it looked great on the Turkish spindle, and I love doing a little mini skein with a spindle because I feel like spinning with a spindle gets me really up close to the fiber. When I spin with a wheel, it's kind of down by my lap or off to my side, but when I'm spinning with a spindle, I can have the fiber right up close and I can really see what's going on. And since spinning with a spindle also is a little bit sometimes of a slower process, it helps me to really feel the fiber and what it's doing. I find sometimes with combed top, I end up with something that's very ropey, and that's not always necessarily due to over twisting it. Sometimes a combed merino top just feels really kind of dense, even if it doesn't have a whole lot of twist in it. I think it has to do with the merino being such a fine fiber. It very easily can compact together. And so merino is something that likes to be spun a little bit thinner, simply because you can have a lot of fibers in the same space as another kind of more crimpy, bouncy kind of a fiber that makes a space for itself. It keeps those little pockets of air around it, or it keeps, that crimp kind of pushes its neighbors away. And the comb top merino doesn't do that. It's ironed out flat so that it's good for commercialized spinning equipment. And so that's something that I feel like is always kind of a struggle with combed merino. It can be really ropey. So what I did when I spun this with the spindle was to spin from the fold. So I would take a piece of the fiber, and this is key, don't go too deep in. Don't get, like this. We want to just get a staple length. And there we go. And this is a very long staple. A lot of merino has a long staple, and that's part of the trick of it. With a long staple, you can make it thicker. It will hold together because the length of the fibers are long enough to wrap all the way around a longer distance and still be held in by the twist. And then because they're so fine, and because comb top is all, the crimp is all stretched out, it just bulks up so fast. This is how I was spinning from the fold with my spindle. I took a staple length like this and I just folded it over my finger, just like that. And then I was spinning off the tip like this. So everything was just coming off the tip. Now, I enjoyed it, and I think I ended up with a really lovely yarn. This is the turtle that I had built up, and I pulled it off of there, folded it back on itself, and came up with this 2-ply yarn. There it is. And it does not have all of the characteristics that bother me. In fact, this is a really nice yarn. It's actually very squishy. And I think part of the reason is because when you spin from the tip, it's creating a woolen type of yarn. All of this swirling off the tip of your finger into the twist of the yarn, it's catching air in there. And because the fibers are folded over, some of them are folding with a little tiny little pocket of air in there. And so it's creating a way for more air to be incorporated. That's making the yarn a little bit more lofty and a little bit more squishy. And that's what I really like to have in a yarn. And so I thought, let's really go for this long draw from the fold. Let's go to Elizabeth in double drive and just absolutely pull it out like taffy and see if we can really spin this. Because when a lot of us spin, we see comb top and think, ah, worsted spinning. So we're just kind of inchworming along, and a lot of people refer to that as the inchworm technique. And they just inchworm along as they spin, and that can take a really long time to accomplish. And you know, sometimes we want to have just a long, mindful spin, but sometimes we're spinning because we're so excited about the project that it's going into, or, you know, whatever reason, we might want to get it done a little quicker. And there's nothing wrong with choosing a different technique that will work for you. And time it takes to accomplish that technique can factor into that. So, all right, so let's tip the camera down. I'm going to show you what I have on my bobbin so far, how it looks, and get this long drawing. I'm not sure that works. Let's get spinning. This is what I have spun so far onto my bobbin, and it's a really lovely yarn. It has a tiny bit of fuzz to it, a tiny bit of that sort of woolen fuzzy halo. Not really halo, but there's a little bit of a fuzzy texture to it. I like that for this yarn. I think it's just so soft, and it just has such a gentle purpleness to it. That's my favorite. All right, so I have a pretty good sized bobbin here going already. And I have about this much fiber left, a couple ounces, maybe an ounce and a half or 2 ounces maybe, maybe a little less. Joins are always a question. That is a perpetual question, because joins are very tricky to get them to stay up, you know, to stay together and not to fuzz up in a weird way when your hand slides across it. So I am going to remove this sparkle that I just noticed. There we go. Okay, I am going to make sure there's still some fuzz on the end here as I just lay it across, and I want the fuzz to lay across this staple that I'm going from the fold, and then I will bring it right over like that, and I'm ready. So I want to make sure that I am pinching whatever fibers are here right at the tip. I want to pinch that and pull it forward. I'm not going to pull my hand back. I'm going to pinch it and pull it out. Pull it forward as the twist begins. And that usually gets me a nice join that I can run my hands on, and it doesn't get weirdly fuzzy, and it starts to right away catch on to whatever's coming up in that staple that I have folded over. I love the chatter on this wheel. So now I'm treating this the exact same way that I would if this was a rolag. I am using this hand that's closest to the wheel to control how much twist I'm letting in. And so if I have too much twist all at once, it gets bound up here and I can't draft it back. So I pinch that off, and maybe I roll out some of that twist so that I am able to draft by pulling back. There we go. And then when it starts to get a little thin at this point, that means I don't have enough twist coming in and I'm starting to thin down. I don't want that. So at that point I let more twist in, and it will catch up more fibers out of this staple. So it's definitely a back and forth kind of delicate little dance that I'm doing between letting that twist in or out and drafting back. Sometimes I'll hold on to it, kind of unroll it a little bit, stretch it out if I get a section that's too thick. And I just keep going. But I'm going to record until I get to the end of this floof of fiber that I'm spinning. Now, I sometimes take my finger out and it just stays folded over. See how this just stays folded over? Especially right at the end. It doesn't really hurt the draft as long as I'm keeping control of the whole staple. If I let part of the staple come forward, then suddenly we turn into something that wants to be a worsted spin and it gets a little tricky. But as long as I keep this folded over, it's okay. And that works because the staple length is so long for this merino. Okay, so I've pretty much spun just about everything that's right here to spin. I am going to change my hook and get another staple length, which I had prepared over there. And actually, sometimes when I'm doing this, I will pull 2 staple lengths off of the comb top and stack them together. Kind of open it up so they integrate a little bit, and I'll just stack them together. Fold that over. And as long as it's a staple length on top of a staple length and you kind of roll it open a little bit, they will incorporate together and you'll be able to spin right on through that. So here's the fluff that I had left over. I'm going to run it kind of down the center. There we go, down the center. So this part comes over my finger here, and then pinch and pull forward right from the tip there. Make sure it doesn't kind of clump up. I definitely want to make sure I'm drafting it out. There we go. But I pinch right from that tip until I'm sure that the fiber I am incorporating into the yarn, the fiber that's feeding to me, is coming from the new over the, you know, the new fiber supply, and that it's not just drafting out from whatever was under there, you know, because then that drafts out. It hasn't combined with the new stuff yet, and then we have a more difficult join because there's no floof left at the end. And I can spin even a little faster and draft faster. The speed at which I pull my hand backwards to draft from it depends on the amount of twist coming in there. So in order to keep up with the wheel putting more twist in as I treadle faster, I have to draw my hand back faster. And once you start to feel the tension of how the twist is playing together with the fiber and becoming the yarn, once you can really feel that tension interplay, it becomes a lot more natural. You don't have to think so hard. You just feel, oh, I can draw back faster, and oh, I can treadle faster, and they correlate together, and you know, off you go. You can speed up one. I find it easier, got a little fluffy bit here to draft out. I find it easier to treadle faster and draft back faster with long draw than I do when I'm purely spinning worsted. It's just so difficult to, you know, go really fast when you're just pinching those little bits. But a long draw, if that twist is there, it's gonna grab those fibers. They want to go into the yarn with that twist, and it's just a lot easier to draft back faster. And I could fill a whole bobbin like this, you know, just in an hour or two of spinning. I can go through a lot of fiber this way. This part's a little thick. So I'm just gonna stop. Give that an extra draft. See, now I've come to this point where I just kind of naturally take my finger out and everything starts to feel like it's flopping around. But that's fine. I just keep it folded over. You can see from this side, I just keep it folded over and hold on to it. and we can continue the long draw process. Poor Elizabeth is so creaky. She works so hard for me. I really need an updated Elizabeth, but you know, this one's my girl. We've been together a while. Oh, too thin here. So if you need to fix a spot that's too thin, you can just untwist it, let it kind of floof out a little bit, and then do that same technique where you know, fluff it up through there, lay it on the center, fold it back over, and the key to that good join is to pinch from the fiber supply and pull it forward. Somehow, if you pinch but pull back, it doesn't incorporate as well, and you'll get a weird spot that kind of fluffs up if you give it any abrasion, and that can create a spot that will eventually pill. So pinch and pull forward, and that gives you a better join. I would love for you to try this out if you haven't before. Let me know if any of these tips or this demonstration has helped you figure out what to do, and tell me all about it in the comments. I'd love to hear it. Happy spinning, friends. I'll see you in the next one.